I'm just going to be up against a lot of flack.
For being the girl?
Yes. But Chris had another idea. He thought it was going to bring attention to the group. And it did, and it worked.
Do you remember hearing from Chris what David thought about you joining the group?
He said to me, he thought that women's role shouldn't really be in the big world because it was a dangerous place for women.
He really said this?
He really said this to me.
You had very short hair. Where
Yes.
did that look come from?
Well, that came from David. One day he said, you know, I think it'll make your eyes look bigger if you have short hair. So I said, okay. I thought, well, if it pleases him.
Tell me about your involvement with Psycho Killer.
David was listening to Alice Cooper and thought, I can do something really rude. So David said, I need lyrics. And so we brainstormed. I said, well, Hitchcock would say, I'm going to kill you because you're rude, you're not polite.
You start a conversation and you can't even finish it. You're talking a lot, but you're not saying anything.
And he had this really brilliant idea, which was, I want to create a sense of schism where he changes personality from being one person to being another person. I think the best way to do that is change language. So I wrote lyrics to that effect.
Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est?
Didn't always get the pronunciation right, but it was a good approximation, and people kind of got it. Although I noticed today that when people covered the song, they copy the mistakes.
Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth posited this idea that women are drawn to the bass because it's a naturally nurturing role.
Oh, please. I don't think it has anything to do with gender, and it's one of the reasons I've always eschewed answering feminist questions. It's so loaded. If you want to do something, just do it. Don't talk about it, and don't criticize other women. If they want to go out, you know, and swing on a wrecking ball naked, why not? Let them do what they want. We just are smart as women because we have our balls neatly tucked inside where they're protected. And that's that.
That's all! Over to you!
If David Byrne really thought the world was a dangerous place for women, he'd be aghast at the thought of our next band, Girls' School, who found themselves in among this lot. Heavy metal was the last male domain in music, but one band piqued the interest of Lemmy and joined the hard-gigging, hard-drinking, access-all-areas world of the Monsters of Rock. Why do you think you were drawn to metal? What was it about metal?
Well, I grew up listening to it, you know. The first couple of concerts I went to, Hammersmith Odeon with my mate from school when we were 16, I think, something like that. Black Sabbath, saw Black Sabbath and then Deep Purple on the Burn tour. Little did I know that later on in the years we'd actually be playing with them.
Come on! Nothing to lose, come on!
When you first played rock clubs that had probably only ever seen male bands in them before, did you ever feel that you had to win the audience over?
I think in the beginning people didn't really know what to make of us. You know, they just, I think first of all, just looked at us as if to say, what the hell is going on here, you know?
Did you get any heckles?
Oh, God, yeah. It always used to be, get your tits out, basically, you know. And we used to say, get yours out first.
After learning their trade playing sweaty rock clubs, girls' school received the ultimate metal seal of approval.
There's this little band called Motorhead, happened to be looking for a support band. And Lemmy heard the single, and he came down to rehearsal to see if we could actually play. And of course, then they invited us on their first major British tour. We'd never been, on a tour like it, so we didn't really know what to expect. And we actually shared a bus with Motorhead as well on the first tour. So of course we hardly even knew them. And first of all, when we saw pictures of them before we actually met them, we would go, "What the hell?" Absolutely petrified.
On tour with Motorhead, were you under pressure to party as hard as them because you were, had to keep your end up?
We didn't find any pressure whatsoever. There was no mentions of cups of tea or anything like that. I mean, basically, they used to bring us in crates of special brew.
So tell me about Please Don't Touch.
Dick Mail, our producer, basically, and then started to work with Motorhead as well. And he's the one that came up with the idea. He said, "Why don't you two get together to do Please Don't Touch?"
Please don't touch, I shake so much. Please don't touch, I shake so much.
It went straight into #5. We've still got the silver record. I mean, it sold 250,000 and it only went to #5. That was a really exciting time. I mean, the first time we went on Top of the Pops, of course, it was massive.
Were you seen as dangerous girls?
One American tour, on the back of the T-shirts, it said the Lock Up Your Sons tour, which we thought was absolutely brilliant. So,
All these innocent young boys coming to see you.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Changed forever.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Imagine being at a Joy Division gig and being asked to stand in for Ian Curtis on stage. Then joining the remaining members of the band in their new incarnation. You're not the front woman, you don't get to sing and dance around, but gradually you find yourself in charge of the technicals.
When Ian died, the manager, Rob, said to Stephen and the rest of the group, "What do you think about Gillian joining?" Because they could never replace Ian and they didn't want another singer, so they decided that they needed one person to play keyboards and guitar. Rocky's a bit strange. The first thing he said was, "Right, you've got to learn how to tune up a guitar." And I'm like, "Oh God, I'll have to." And then I didn't realise till a month later, he couldn't even tune a guitar.
Tell me about your own creative role in the group and how that emerged over time.
I was in charge of all the equipment, all the keyboards, and starting all the sequences. Because you were programming sequences, you had to know the note names, because they all played by ear. Bernard used to say, "Well, what note do you think they'll go in there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's an A sharp." And he'd be like, "All right."
What's your memories of Top of the Pops?
We were in our "we want to play everything live" phase. Top of the Pops say, "We don't do anything live. Everybody's got to mime." Well, no, we don't want to mime. So that caused a big uproar.
How does it feel when you treat me like you do? And you laid your hands upon me and told me who you are.
Another thing about Top of the Pops, they like you to move. And as soon as they saw me, especially, I had to start it all and then just stand there waiting for my cue. They couldn't get their head around that. It was like, oh dear, we've got problems, they don't move.
But their lack of movement didn't deter the Football Association, who needed a song for England's 1990 World Cup campaign, and it was Gillian who obliged.
World in Motion, such a sort of famously blokey song. How did that come about?
We'd worked on a Janet Street Porter production that was called Reportage. I wrote the one at the end, with the credits, and she said, well, the reportage piece could be the start of the World in Motion song. They weren't really into football, the rest of New Order. There was only me and my dad. We used to watch World Cup games and together. So I was really into football, so it was like, yeah! My dad was so proud of me, yeah. And we met them in the studio, and Paul Gascoigne came in and he went, hey, that's a big organ, isn't it? You know, the mixing desk.
World in Motion became New Order's only #1 hit in the UK. Gillian Gilbert and Stephen Morris had been in a relationship for years, proving sometimes rock and roll couples can work. But can you expect such a harmonious ride when you marry Mark E. Smith? LA-born art student and Anglophile indie freak Laura Elise Salinger got talking to Mark E. Smith one night after a gig. Within 6 months, she was living in Prestwich and a member of the Fall.
Hello, Brick Smith. I'm Kate. Oh, look at these guys. Pixie and Gladys.
Yeah.
So tell me how you found out about the Fall and how you became a member.
We saw in the Chicago Reader that the Fall were coming to play. I was waiting in line to get beer, and as I got my beer and I turned around, bam, smacked into the singer, who had a bottle of beer in each hand and a line of white powder coming down his nose, which should have been a red flag, but hey, rock and roll.
I'm totally wired, so totally wired.
He said, you know, we were invited to a party afterwards. Do you want to come? And I said, sure. And we got in the car, and he said to me, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm in a band. And he said, oh, do you have any tapes of your music? And I put the tape in, and he said, who wrote these songs? And I said, I did. And he said, you're a fucking genius. And basically, it was sort of decided over the next couple of days that he would bring me over to England and help me get a solo record deal and sort of mastermind it and be my Svengali.
Mark E. Smith had other ideas and thought his newfound genius would make a good addition to the Fall. So he wooed Brix to the delights of Manchester.
When I landed, I was shocked. Driving from the train station, I was just so heinous. And Mark was so excited, like he is like, loves Manchester. He showed me the must-see sights. So he was like, look, Brixie, over there's Boddington's Brewery. And I'm like, oh, yeah, great. He goes, that's Strange Ways Prison. And I'm like, God.
But just a pair of flabby wings. I took to doing some hovering.
But saying that, I was where I wanted to be. I was doing what I wanted to do. And I was with a man that I loved.
Pick the fleas, mister! Eat yourself better!
3 months later, they were Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and Brix was now writing songs and a fully fledged member of the Fall.
Can you explain what you brought to the Fall?
What I did was I just wove a bit of light into their dark, which sonically people could hear, like orally, and it would stay in their head.
Did the sort of TV appearances sort of escalate once you joined the group?
Yeah, When we got on TV, when we did videos, I was on the cover of magazines, we were all on the cover. I felt great about this. I think Mark was also extremely happy about it.
Between 1983 and 1996, Brix wrote songs and featured on over 7 albums for the Fall.
What would you say the most difficult thing on a day-to-day level about being in a band with your other half is?
I don't know. I mean, he's not the easiest guy, personally, but it was great to be kind of a double act in a way because we had each other to bounce off, and because we're so polar opposite, it was fascinating to everybody how we could be a couple.
In the late 80s, the American charts were filled with heavy metal bands, and women were often the spandexed adornments. But there was an alternative. Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth was to become the godmother of grunge, inspiring a whole generation of girls in bands.
Once upon a time, there were 2 sisters raised on a diet of hair metal and the sound of music in Dayton, Ohio. One joined the Pixies. The other one became a program analyst for a defense contractor. When Kim Deal wanted to start a new band, she gave her sister Kelly a call, even though Kelly couldn't play guitar. Thus, the Breeders were born. What's it like trying to penetrate the strange creative world of identical twin sisters?
I always wanted to be in a band and play music with people. Being in Dayton and being a girl, I'm trying to think of anybody in Dayton at that time that I can remember that other than, that did anything other than sing, or like maybe played a keyboard or played tambourine or something.
How was it for you working in a band with 2 sisters?
I found it kind of difficult, actually, in the beginning. But not only because I was like, who is this person who's joined the band who can't play anything? And then second of all, because they do know each other so very well, and sometimes the gloves are off.
Is it fisticuffs?
No,
God, I
but
wish.
it's very raw, and it's very like, oh my God, how can they be like this with each other? And then the next minute, everything seems like it's fine.
Tell me the best thing about being in a band with your sister.
Well, musically, there's a lot of shortcuts. Pretend like you're going into McGuffey's House of Draft, okay? And you know the smell of the beer there and that, okay, remember that one bathroom? Okay, play it like that.
As grunge broke and Nirvana led the way, Kurt Cobain said the Breeders' debut album Pod had been a huge influence on him.
All the media attention. It was about, you know, alternative music and Nirvana and the whole changeover from a certain type of music to another type of music, I think. And we were in the middle of that.
Stuff that had been kind of obscure and not particularly well known, except for by, you know, aficionados.
You know, trading tapes.
All of a sudden, that became what was mainstream.
In 1993, the Breeders were on a high. Their song Cannonball was named Melody Maker's Single of the Year. The video was directed by Spike Jonze and Kim Gordon herself.
How did the media treat you for being a mostly female band?
We definitely got lumped in with, it became a bit of a thing where, you know, a whole list of people would be name-checked as if it was some movement.
The Breeders were part of a new shift of girl-fronted bands. Grunge and the underground punk scene Riot Girl gave girls a new freedom and a bigger say in alternative music.
To be talked about in the media as being part of that and name-checked as, you know, being a girl band or whatever, it never really bothered me because I subscribe to The Oscar Wilde's "The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about."
I don't think I'd want to be in a band with all guys. I would find that so boring.
Why would that be boring?
Oh, God. Because guys are boring.
The Breeders and others were finding the world of rock more accessible to girls. British indie had also been accommodating, and it offered a home from home for two girls from London.
When I was about 12, my mum went to live in America. I lived with my dad. He wasn't around very much. I'd moved schools. I was quite lonely. That was the point when music became like a real obsession. Music became my sort of community, and so when I met Emma, who was also in Lush, we were quite similar in that way, actually. So we started going to gigs together, and then suddenly being in a band is like quite easy, actually, because everyone's in a band. Most of them are awful, so you think, well, I can do that. When we started, it was just writing music and playing it live. And we didn't really think that much about the sound. In fact, we had no technical knowledge about guitars or anything. And because we weren't confident musicians, because we weren't confident singers, that sort of effects and swirliness, you know, it cloaks a lot. It really does.
But in 1992, Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction liked their sound so much that Lush found themselves catapulted into America's alternative rock scene when they were asked to play at Lollapalooza alongside the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
So we got onto this bill, which was just ridiculous. And because we were the underdogs and we had absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain, we had a really good time, actually. We really enjoyed it. But it was, you know, introduction to big American rock.
A few years later, Mickey took her experience of meeting the Chili Peppers' red-blooded Anthony Kiedis at Lollapalooza and used it as inspiration for Lush's hit Lady Killers.
Loads of people at the time that I wrote Lady Killers, or it came out, they were like, oh, that's really sexist towards men, and, you know, we're just, you know, if we give women attention, we're just trying to chat women up. I don't mind flirting with people, I just don't like being sleazed.
Hey, watch this lot. I once tried to get off with the lead singer after a Pulp concert. Chatted up for a bit, she gave me her phone number. When I rang it was a pizza delivery place. So I ordered an extra topping and never saw her again. Until tonight, that is. Have a good look, this is Lush.
In 1996, Lush found themselves described in the press as a Britpop band, and surrounded by new lads to boot.
I didn't really like the Britpop thing, and I didn't like the association. To me, the landscape changed. It was about being a bloke. It was about having swagger. It was about larging it. Don't get me wrong, I have danced my arse off to Girls and Boys by Blur. You know, it's fun. But I just felt excluded. There was a lot of nice people, but some of them were dickheads and arseholes.
Did you ever get any hassle from the male Britpop bands?
I remember Alex from Blur sinking his teeth into my arse, and he thought it was hilarious, and he thought I'd be really flattered. And this is what I mean about the change. Suddenly it seemed okay to relate to women in that way.
In the age of the lads mag, the band soon discovered that the media wanted more from them than just music.
We had a few experiences with photographers, and I remember turning up and there was this sort of rail of, you know, stuff for us to wear, and I was honestly dressed in a skirt that was like a football scarf or something. I mean, it barely covered my arse. And the photographer was going, right, so if you could just turn around and sort of, you know, just bend over and sort of, if you just open your legs a bit and kind of, and I was like, fuck, like, absolutely no way.
Shake, baby, shake. Now I can fit you in my arms.
20 years after laddism became a dirty word, Lush have decided to reform.
It's a great thing to play a gig. It's so exciting. You create something in a room, you know, you create a real happening. It's an event. And that, I think, you know, was visceral. The rest of it, the kind of, you know, the hanging out with whoever it is, you know, you can keep that.
Mickey from Lush may have loved the creativity of band life, although in the past few years it's female solo artists who've dominated the charts. But the bands are still out there.
Perhaps, having deconstructed everything, we should be thinking about putting everything back together.
50 years after Carol Kay had made Frank Sinatra do a double take, an explosive foursome from London still found themselves answering the age-old line of inquiry, what's it like being a girl in a band? Which is a pretty dumb question to ask savages.
When people ask, how's it feel to be a woman in a band? I'm like, okay, how does it feel to be a woman walking up the stairs? How does it feel to be a woman eating a sandwich? You see, like, I think it's just absurd. Each one of us in the band were raised by our parents thinking we could do anything. Like, it wasn't special that Faye was playing the drums or Gemma was going to play guitar.
If you ever had to deal with, like, the classic male hecklers in the audience?
Yeah, it happened in Bridlington. For some reason, the crowd was really crazy that night. At some point in between two songs, they started shouting, "Girl, get your tits up to the lads." I thought they were chanting something cool, like something good. And I turned to Faye, the drummer, and I was like, "Hey, you're right." She was like, "No, this is not cool." And I didn't get it until the end of the show. But the girls got it, and they were really angry. But that was the only time it happened. So maybe it's just Bridlington.
It may have been a solo heckler in Bridlington, but 20 years after the Breeders and Lush found themselves getting headlines for being girls in rock bands, the New York Times ran an article suggesting that even in 2015, girls in bands are an exotic sight.
The New York Times, they wrote a really good article about us. But the title was Girls at Work. And then under the picture, it was written, Savages, a female rock band from London. A fan took a picture of that little caption and they crossed out the word female. It got a bit mental, like all our fans retweeted it, and then the next day when you went back to the New York Times website, they had changed the title. We're so used to that, macho kind of vision, and that's just normal. It's just how it is. But as soon as you start pointing, well, maybe this is not right, then that's how, things can start to change.
Looking back over the decades, has there been any change for a girl in a band?
I think there must have been a change, but I think it's a bit slow.
What would you like to see in 10, 20 years' time?
I would like that when there's a woman that starts to live a little bit louder than the others, that she's not labelled feminist.
So you found yourself in a band. You might be playing bass to cover the bills. You could be escaping suburbia by going out on the road for the first time. Or you could be teaming up with your sibling or your other half and allowing that relationship to play out through music. They say it's different for girls. What does that even mean? One thing's clear, you're obsessed with music, but sometimes you'll find there's more to life than being just the girl in the band.